Hello. Hello to everybody. Um, this is to Gary, um, aka in Mendham. Now, why you could think that the physics forums should be open to your scientific ideas, the why of that is clear. But when you criticize their wisdom in not wanting to take part, it seems naive on your part, right? Because look at the way you treat me, somebody willing to talk to you. And I don't have a traditional scientific perspective. I mean, I believe the universe is information processing and et cetera, et cetera. There's many things in which I'm not really traditional. For example, if all my ideas were discussed on the physics forums. But I'm coming from a traditional, well, what's now traditional, not classical, but a modern physics perspective. And look how you treat me. And you know full well. And you can say to yourself, but yeah, but they don't know. Right. They theoretically don't know. But the fact is, if you talk to the people at the physics forums, they'd be pointing you in the same direction as things that I've told you. They would expect you to take them more seriously than I've expected you to take them. And you'd be calling them lying fucktards in no time, obviously. Do you not know that that would be the case? Even if you think it's because they are lying fucktards and not because you have a screw loose, then still you would have to be able to foresee that happening. You would have to know there are millions of people with their own systems, and no two of them are the same. It's you and Theoria, and astrometry, times a billion. There's millions of you. They would have to talk about that all the time. You should go to a weird science forum where they want to talk about that kind of thing and call them fucktards. How you would think that that could work out and that it's on them to extend the benefit of the doubt because they're scientists, so they should talk to me. No, they see you coming a fucking mile away. Before the internet, there were people sending angry typewritten manuscripts about science and complaining that the scientists were just a bunch of cozy fools. And the thing is, if you studied any history of science, you'd have no trouble finding out people that thought the relativity of velocity, no, it wasn't going to turn out that way. Michelson believed that. When he did that theory, it was to prove that there was a reference frame for your speed. And the reference frame was light and however it traveled. That's what he expected. It's the most famous experiment for having a negative result. He had a result like the bending laser experiment that would show if that theory was true. He didn't have lasers, so he couldn't do the laser version, the bending laser version. But you could. And in the history of science, people did not want to believe. Einstein famously didn't want to believe it. He wasn't the only one, and people didn't want to believe the shit Einstein came up with either. They resisted and resisted. They weren't just a. I mean, the idea that people, scientists, from all across every culture on Earth, they all just happen to be the kind of people that want the world to be weird. No, they're the kind of people that wanted to be able to predict and know every single little thing. The reputation of science that somehow even you expect. That's what they wanted. Right? So the idea that they just, oh no, they just all, and they never checked. They've never checked these things is insane, as is thinking that you wouldn't end up calling the guys in the physics forum lying fucktard liars that are just jealous because they better not steal your idea. They've seen it all before. This is a pattern that has been seen before. This is what they expect from someone like you, and we know on this side where we have had the conversation with you that that is exactly what you would do. To the point where I have to wonder if, if talking to you counts as, you know, antagonizing an ill person. If we hadn't talked about so many other things, and if that I can still maintain an idea that, can you not see what you're doing? You expect fair treatment from the physics forum because they're physicists. No, they want to discuss peer-reviewed scientific results and figure out what those mean. You think peer review is a bunch of liars hiding things on purpose, which would have to be some sort of a cabal. And that's what all of the people with their own out of band theories say. You are just trying to steal it. You're jealous. You know it's true, but you can't, and you bought it out. That's what they all fucking say. You yourself, when Theoria is going off the hinge, you're like, oh, it just makes you look bad, dude. But you don't see that in your own case. So, of course, they are, as it turns out, right or wrong, whether they should have this bias or not. We know that in your case, yeah, they're right. You would just end up calling them names and you'd get nowhere. If you think you could get somewhere, you ought to be able to get somewhere with everybody else that's trying to tell you what they believe. Now, the bonus section is science does get things wrong. Now, a major example in our lifetimes is string theory, which related to or beget a supersymmetry theory. And this theory was used for all kinds of things to explain cosmology, the inflation, of the universe during the Big Bang or various attempts at that. And it has been believed by physicists for decades now, since the 70s or 80s. And it was also criticized by other physicists as just being a mathematical reverse engineering, create a math that matches. And for a long time they said, hey, it's untestable. But no, the supersymmetry version predicted certain new elements, or not elements, sorry, particles that had never been seen before. So theoretically, eventually we could test it, right? But they believed it. I mean, there was a TED talk of the guy, who figured out this beautiful mathematics, and there's been tremendous mathematical achievements in studying it. This 11-dimensional and 10-dimensional and M-branes, all these theories. And it wasn't like there was no constraints, because these mathematical things did have to be reverse engineered from things we had seen, but they end up predicting things we haven't seen. Well, along comes the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, and it has enough energy to create particles that are predicted, and sorry, no such particles. Not happening. So string theory is rejected. Yeah, it took decades and decades. And in that period, some scientists would act like, we know this. Why? Because all my scientist friends agree. So that does happen. But even in that case, lurking are these theorists and stuff and standard model physicists that are like, no, I don't think so. We'll wait and bide our time. And then when the evidence comes in, when we are able to have a device able to discriminate between such a theory and its alternatives, and we find out, no, its predictions are wrong, it's not right, well, then the theory goes away, right? And after hundreds of years of this, we don't want just some guy coming in and calling us a fucktard liar because we believe in the Huygens model of wave propagation. Now, I'm different because my whole mission is different. I'm not here just talking about science. I'm interested in the psychological aspects. I'm interested in the fact that democracy and politics, and people can believe whatever they want. I'm interested in what are the impacts of that on our society, which are the harmless beliefs, which aren't harmless and might ruin relationships but won't affect politics. I'm interested in a broader spectrum than just the science, even natural philosophy as a category is more broad than science, and that's my interest. But the physics forum, why would they want to be called lying, fucktard, jealous, fucktard liars? Why would they be willing to do that? It doesn't make sense. Mike Loomish says, "What string theory is wrong?" And to think nobody told me. Oh, it's going to come out. It's well known. Actually, it's a couple years old. They should have found. Well, string theory could be modified. That's a very general term, but like supersymmetry, the string theory that had come in to be accepted, there's predictions on heavy particles that should have shown up in the LHC and didn't. So it's scrambling. Of course, there'll be a modified version of it, and the mathematics of it will be used, and some other high dimensional theory will have similarities. But yeah, string theory basically is dead. Back to the drawing board. The whole thing that well, it's funny because the original criticism I remember in the late 80s and 90s is that, well, you can't prove or disprove it. Does that really count as a theory? Physics professors were saying, does it really count as a theory? Sure, there's whole popular departments of people that think, yeah, but if you can't test it, and then it turns out, well, you can test it, right? And in fact, you'd see the signs of it in the cosmic background, for example. And so, oh, victory, except for then it did get tested and was rejected. So, but it doesn't mean something similar. It doesn't mean that strain of ideas won't be the ultimate, guiding force or whatever. But yes, the theory, the LHC, um, the probabilities of creating these particles didn't happen. It's already known. Carmel says, "You're an autistic, psychotic, socially retarded, lying fraud moron." Huh. Wonder who she's talking about. Mike says, "Well, good. Theory should be constantly underwritten." Carmel, really? What? At what point will you realize you need help with this? Please, see, accept the help that's probably already being offered to you. Okay, I don't want to read that. On the other hand, I don't really give a shit if I do. It wouldn't be the worst thing I've read this week. All right. Cheers. All right. I want to reiterate the Democrats want to get Republican voters into the Democratic camp. They want to be a broad coalition that includes all antiquated ideas, or most of them. And to do that, they only have to make a few adjustments, like endorsing states' rights and accepting that some of their holy cows won't be respected in every one of the states. And I think they'll probably make that because they really, really want to triple, quadruple down on this thing of convincing the Republicans that voted for Trump, who it's not really their best interest. They didn't really vote for what they thought. This is the Democratic theory. They want to get those voters to do the same thing. I mean, vote for Democrats. And I think we have to mobilize to make parties and movements not necessarily to their left, but to their left in terms of populist working class ethics, which includes some conservative, traditionally conservative ideologies. But in my specific case, to their more progressive left, that includes safety nets and peace on earth and all of that good uh, economic justice warriors. That's what we need to do. Create this movement to their left, with including candidates of our own, and just make it easier and easier because they think we're the loony left, and it's crazy all of our ideas when only about a quarter of them, maybe a third, are crazy. But that's what they believe. They should be allowed to believe that and encouraged to like war, to feel using dead soldiers that didn't need to die as political props is noble and presidential. Those people need their own party. They should have, Democrats want to be that party. Let them be that party, and let us be to the progressive and economic social justice warrior side of them, and they can go more and go ahead and represent the wealthy people who also have a vested interest. Theoretically, the wealthy people aren't all crazy. They don't want the system to collapse. So let the Democrats represent that. And that's someone we could have a meeting of heads about and argue over how things go. That's what has to happen. And since I'm in Maine with ranked choice voting, I think I'm in the perfect place to go ahead and pursue that. So what I'm trying to say is, fuck you, Democratic Party. So I'm just sitting here thinking about this, and I mean, I think what I'm saying is that we have a kind of irreconcilable difference. I have been told my whole life, and but to various degrees, never really violated the idea. Like, I didn't want to vote for Clinton even. He was conservative as far as I was concerned, and I turned out right. You know, it was the Koch brothers, or Koch brothers as some people call them. They're the ones that funded the DLC with Gore and Lieberman and Clinton, the idea of a Southern strategy for Democrats. That happened. Look it up. Right? So, but it was still like, yeah, but what about Roe v. Wade and the Supreme Court? Which would you rather have? And oh my God. And it's been pretty convincing. Um, you know, I didn't like Nader, so it was easy not to vote for him. But, you know, I've not seen anybody that I could vote for except for, oh, yeah, that, you know, Obama over McCain, you know, even though Obama seemed disappointing in many respects, especially his first term. You know, there was no time at which I'm like, I wish I had voted for McCain. But really, it's kind of like an abusive relationship where, you know, the Democratic Party keeps saying, no, I'm willing to work on it. You just need to work on it more. Don't you see how much I'm working on it? You just need to work on it more. And you need to face reality. And some of this is just the way things go. And you can't have everything you want. You can't have a unicorn. You can't be a snowflake. And I'm like, I don't want a unicorn. I'm not trying to be a snowflake. I'm just saying, could we stop torturing people? Let's not attack the world and make it hate us. Let's not be Skynet and be the robot drone bombers, the soul of the robot army. Let's not do that. And we can't get concessions for that, but people that want to fuck the environment more and extend fracking, they can all do that, though. And I'm like, that's not, it's not working out. Just shut up. We could work on this. You need to be willing to work on it more forever. While they're not really working on it, right? If they were working on it, they would make some concessions. We could have had Bernie as VP or Elizabeth Warren or a million people. We could have a liberal DNC chair, and that wouldn't even mean shit. Like when the Republicans did Michael Steele, they didn't fucking mean they couldn't subvert him and do their own thing and just use him as a front man. They won't even hire a front man that looks good. So, fuck them. We're not working. It's not working out. But it could, you know, it could. It'll never work out with the only other person on earth. They're not the only other person on earth. I'm an individual. MGTOW. Political MGTOW. Yeah. PGTOW. Politics going its own way. Oh, the irony. The irony. I guess I'll leave it with that. Because that's about a perfect summation of what I was trying to say.